Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Okay, so obviously yesterday was some big news for the Spider-Man fans, and for the Marvel fans, and for, I guess, the movie fans in general. The Spider-Man No Way Home trailer finally released, and it was amazing. I mean, this was pretty much my reaction to it.
Hello, Peter.
Look, I know my expectations for this film are probably way too high and it might leave me disappointed, but I'm still flipping excited because it looks amazing, and I actually cannot believe we're getting original characters from the other films returning in this movie. It's amazing. But because of all the excitement around the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, I thought this week, why not do a Spider-Man movie tier list? And now look, I know we just did a Marvel Cinematic Universe tier list, but this is a bit different because it's all the Spider-Man movies, not just Homecoming and Far From Home. So also, if you look on this tier list here, you can see that I have included the Spectacular Spider-Man. We've included that. I'll tell you now why. And also Venom. Included Venom as well. So the reason why I included the Spectacular Spider-Man and not other TV shows or video games or whatever is because I actually just love the Spectacular Spider-Man. I think it's one of the best Spider-Man renditions ever. It's amazing. It's on Netflix South Africa now. If you guys have not yet seen it, go watch it. It's bloody fantastic. And unfortunately, it got cancelled early because of the whole Disney-Sony thing. I think that's what happened. I'm not quite sure. But it's a great show, and I really wish they made more of it. But what we did get from the show was, excuse the term, spectacular. So that's why I've included it here. And then Venom is also here because it technically takes place in the Sony sort of Spider-Man universe at the moment, and apparently the Venom sequel has some other Spider-Man characters in it. I'm not quite sure if that's true or not. It's just rumors. I don't really keep up to date with all that stuff, but that's what's here, so we've included that as well. Anyway, without further ado, I don't want to waste your time, don't want to waste my time. Let's get into this tier list. This one's for the OG fans as well. This mask, I know the OG fans like this. The OG subscribers like this. I remember from one of my Spider-Man reviews. You guys are welcome. You're welcome. Okay, anyway, let's get into it. So we got the first Spider-Man movie, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film, just called Spider-Man. This released in the early 2000s, and I think it was 2001. Let me just double check that quickly. Let me just quickly do a little fact check. So released in 2002. I just checked on Google, and this film was fantastic. I mean, I'm not even being like cheesy or funny here when I say this, but this movie is what made me fall in love with films. This is why I have a YouTube channel. This is why I am like pursuing like filmmaking, and this is why I'm a video editor. This is why I'm a photographer. And it's not only like the only reason why. Like obviously there are other factors throughout the years, but this was a huge influence on the sort of creative spark that I found, and that I really wanted to implement with regards to filmmaking. So this film means a lot to me. Very sentimental, very, very special. And so is the second Spider-Man film, Spider-Man 2. But this was the first film that obviously came out, and it just made me super pumped up and excited about what movies were and what they could be for me. And it just opened like this doorway into films for me as a kid. This and the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, funny enough. I know people hate those, but yeah, anyway, so this film is absolutely fantastic. As a Spider-Man film, and as watching it back now without like the sentimental nostalgic factor, it's going to go A tier. It is fantastic, really great characters. I really enjoyed Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I know some people have an issue with him, but I think he's fantastic. He might be my favorite Spider-Man as well. But it's a really, really great film. It's not as good as Spider-Man 2, and that's, I guess, kind of a spoiler for the next one that we're going to talk about. But it is up there with being one of the best Spider-Man films of all time at the moment. It is great. Love Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, and the whole cast was just great. You really do, what I love about the Raimi films is you really do focus a lot on Peter Parker as well, and not just Spider-Man, and I think that's important, because at the end of the day, like Peter Parker, the struggles Peter Parker goes through is what makes Spider-Man great. The fact that he is trying to hide his identity, the fact that he is trying to, work hard at school, work hard at his job, work hard at university and whatever, like that's what makes the Spider-Man character so interesting. He is an ordinary, everyday person, but he's also got great responsibility and great power. But yeah, we also got introduced to that line in this film, which is like iconic. I know it was from the comic books, but still just great to see it on film. Soundtrack by Danny Elfman as well. Fantastic soundtrack. One of my favorite superhero soundtracks of all time. It's a great film. I love this movie. I watched it again recently, and it still holds up. So good. Next up, we have Spider-Man 2, and this goes straight to S tier. It is so fantastic. This might be my favorite Spider-Man movie ever. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I really do just love this film. It sort of just gives the character like more conflict, more struggle, and it puts them more in like a difficult situation throughout the whole film. What I really love about this film is we really do just get to see how Peter Parker has grown as a person and as Spider-Man, which I think is really, really interesting. They're obviously, like all the characters, like him, MJ, and Harry Osborn, they're like more like sort of young adults now at this stage. So they're trying to deal with the next steps in their life and their careers and stuff, which is really interesting to watch. And there's just a lot of like tension and conflict throughout this film, which I find really, really interesting. We get like a lot of tension between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn, which is really interesting to watch. We obviously have Doc Ock in this film, who is returning in Spider-Man No Way Home, which is really exciting. I can't wait. Alfred Molina plays in, and he is my favorite villain in Spider-Man at the moment in all these films. He's my favorite villain by far. I think he's the most interesting and the most compelling, and he's just the coolest, let's be honest. And just, I know it's kind of a spoiler at the end of this film, but Peter Parker chooses not to like pursue Mary Jane because he knows of how dangerous his life is, which is a huge sacrifice for the character. He chose to almost deny the friendship and relationship he had with Mary Jane up until this point, so she could go do her own thing, and she would be sort of protected from the burden of Spider-Man, which I think is interesting. But then at the end of the film, obviously Mary Jane chooses him, which then plays into the third film a lot. But it's a great film, guys. It honestly is fantastic. I remember watching the trailer for this when like the car goes through the cafe window, and Doc Ock comes in. I remember that was like the first trailer I like just watched over and over again because it was just so amazing. And it was fantastic, and I remember even my dad, who went to go watch one of the Lord of the Rings films, he came home the one day and he was like, guys, I saw the Spider-Man 2 trailer, and I was just so jealous because at the time then like internet wasn't like hugely accessible, and like trailers weren't really on the internet, and I was just so jealous. I was like, how has my dad seen the Spider-Man trailer and I have not yet seen it? But yeah, I mean, there was just so much excitement around this film, and the film just delivered on every single aspect, and especially as a kid, like this was just an amazing film for me. I absolutely loved it. I still love it. It's fantastic. Next up, we have Spider-Man 3, and unfortunately this film doesn't deliver on everything. I still think it's a really solid film. Some people hate this movie. I don't hate it. I think it's a strong film. I don't mind Topher Grace as Venom. Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman was fantastic as Plum Marco. I kind of like the stuff with Harry Osborn in this film. I know people also don't like it, but I think it's decent. So yeah, I'm gonna go. It's between B and C for me. I'm gonna go C tier on Spider-Man 3 for now. This one changes for me like a lot in my head. Like sometimes I watch it and I'm like, oh, that wasn't great. Sometimes I watch it and I'm like, oh, that was fantastic. So it's between B and C, but let's keep it high C for now. It's a great film. I love the symbiote in this film as well. I think it, like honestly, and I know this is going to be controversial, I think it looks better than how it does in Venom. And this film came out like around 10 years before Venom did. But I think just the way like the symbiote attaches to people and stuff, I think it looks better in this film. I'm not saying the Venom design looks better, the symbiote design looks better. Just to clarify, because the Venom design in this film does have a few issues, and I understand that. But I think it's a great film. The Gwen Stacy character is a little weak in this film. I would have liked to have seen that like more like fleshed out, I guess. But I thought it was a pretty solid film regardless of that. And it's a great film about friendship at the end of the day, and like, you know, just sticking with each other. And I think for me this film like has a lot to do with like just being there for each other, being there for people in your life, and no matter what you go through, no matter how badly you hurt people, coming through on top of things. and sticking with them till the end of the line, as Captain America or Bucky would say. But it's at the end of the day, like I've heard there's been a lot of like issues with the production of this film. Like Sam Raimi didn't get to make the film he wanted to make. The studio were interfering. They were like, we need Venom in this film, we need this in the film, we need that in the film. And I can imagine there was like a lot of pressure on Sam Raimi. But regardless of that, Sam Raimi seemed to still just be able to capture the hearts and the spirits of what he had established in these Spider-Man films, which I think is really important. And I really enjoy it. I don't think it's a bad Spider-Man film. I know people don't like it, but I really think it's pretty solid. Definitely not as good as the first two, but it's still a good film, in my opinion. So that's why it's at C tier, and yeah, C4 could have been better, but still great. Okay, next up we have The Amazing Spider-Man. This one came out in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. So similar time to the Avengers, the first Avengers film. And yeah, this film isn't fantastic in my opinion. I really do like what Andrew Garfield does with the character. And Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy was perfect. Like I still kind of, like if Sony does pursue this whole Spider-Verse live action thing, they really need to cast Emma Stone as Spider-Gwen, because she would just be so perfect. She is Gwen Stacy, like she is Gwen Stacy. It's perfect casting. Unfortunately, I really did not like what they did with the villain, like in his evil plan. I thought that was pretty weak. I didn't really care much for how they did like Peter Parker's parents. They tried to do like the whole backstory to the parents thing, and I didn't really care for it, to be honest. And at the end of the day, like this film does just follow in the footsteps of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film in a lot of ways, and I know it has to because it's like an origin story for the character, but like a rebooted origin story. But at the same time, it just didn't feel as original as I thought like it could have. That being said, I really like the Spider-Man suit, and I really do like Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker in this film. I thought they were great, and there are some exciting like action sequences, but I don't feel like the Spider-Man action sequences are nearly as strong as how they were in any of the Raimi films, personally. So that's a bit unfortunate. Like it almost feels like the scale of this film isn't as like epic as the Raimi films, like any of them. And I feel that from this film onwards till the ones we're on currently, like I feel like both the Andrew Garfield films and both the Tom Holland films don't reach the sort of epic scale that the Sam Raimi films got to, unfortunately. I know that's just my opinion and you can disagree with that, but that's how I feel personally. But regardless, it is a decent Spider-Man film. It's D for decent. It's going strong D for that. I think it's good, it's decent, but unfortunately it's not great in my opinion. There's a lot left to be desired with that film, but I do like the Spider-Man suits. I didn't like it at first, but it grew on me a lot. I think it's pretty dope. And pretty original, which is cool. Next up we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 2. And yeah, this film sucked. It didn't suck. That's rude. I shouldn't say that. But it's going E tier. There's a lot of issues in this film. I thought the way they handled the death of Gwen Stacy was fantastic. That's the one thing I love about this film. The score in that scene, the cinematography in that scene, the acting in that scene, so good. And to be honest, I can't believe Sony had the guts to kill off Gwen Stacy, and I feel like it did work in the film, and it was definitely the best part of the film. It's the best part of the film by far. Andrew Garfield does have a pretty nice and original looking Spider-Man suit, like very comic accurate, which is cool. So I did like that aspect in it. But unfortunately, Jamie Foxx's Electro didn't work for me. I know he's coming back for Spider-Man No Way Home, which I'm excited for, because I feel like he might be a cooler Electro this time around. But in this film, he didn't work. Dane DeHaan as Green Goblin didn't work. I didn't like it. And then Paul Giamatti as the Rhino as well didn't work. And I was pretty like annoyed that he was in all the promo material, and he was only in the film for probably like around a minute. Like it's not good. I did like just seeing the struggles of Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy and the struggles of their relationship, because at the end of the first film, Peter Parker promises Gwen Stacy's dad as he's dying that he would keep Gwen out of it, and he doesn't stick to that promise, and as a result Gwen Stacy dies. And I like that they had the guts to do that the filmmakers had the guts to do that. those are some difficult consequences to have to deal with. And I'm a little upset that we don't get to see how Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man does deal with that down the line. But if he is in Spider-Man No Way Home, I hope they address that. Like, honestly, like, I hope they address this massive loss that he faced. Because this was the first Spider-Man movie where he loses a love interest. I know he's lost Uncle Ben in both films, but in both film series, like the Raimi films and the Mark Webb films. But it was the first time he lost a love interest on screen in a movie, and I thought that was quite intense, and it was definitely the best part of the film in my opinion. It's worth a watch. I do have some enjoyment in it, but it is quite long of a movie, and I do get bored watching it, if I'm honest. But there are some great parts in it, but unfortunately it's not great. Okay, then next up we have The Spectacular Spider-Man. I know it's not a movie, and I know it doesn't really fit into this tier list, and it's going to go A tier. I really do love this series. Like, I honestly love this series. I think it's one of the best renditions of the Spider-Man character. All the characters are so well written, and it does have nice callbacks to the Raimi trilogy and a few like nods to the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy, or the two films. It's not a trilogy obviously, but yeah, it's just a great animated series. The characters do go through some really difficult conflicts and situations, which I do appreciate, and it's a great rendition of Spider-Man. Don't want to spend too long on it because it's not actually a Spider-Man film, but I think it's fantastic. I really do. Next up we have Spider-Man Homecoming, and yeah, this will go, I actually like this film. This is going to go B tier. It's going to go B tier. I really loved Michael Keaton as the Vulture. I said this in my MCU tier list video. I also really just loved how the villains in this film used the Chitauri tech from the first Avengers film. I thought that was great. This is obviously the first Spider-Man film within the MCU, which is exciting in itself. Tom Holland is a good Spider-Man and a good Peter Parker. I do enjoy him. I wish he didn't have to rely so much on Tony Stark and his tech, but because Tony Stark has now unfortunately died, maybe that won't be the case going forward, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Besides that though, it's a great film. Obviously Spider-Man learns a lot about responsibility in this film. I love that he's also like a young actor, like he feels like he could be in high school, which wasn't the case for any of these other films. Both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire looked old. They looked old. It didn't look like they were in high school, unfortunately, and it's not a huge thing, but it is a bit of a nitpick. And I like that Tom Holland is actually like a young Spider-Man. It suits the character, it suits the story that was established in the comic books, and I dig it. So it's a good film. I love the reveal of the Vulture being Liz Allen's dad. That was like an amazing twist that I did not see coming, which is usually rare for Marvel films. You can kind of predict where they're going. But that was a twist I didn't see coming, and I really enjoyed that. That was cool. And yeah, I like the whole sequence where he is in his like homemade suit and he's trying to sort of realize what it is to be Spider-Man. I really enjoyed that part in this film as well. Thought that was great. Next up we have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which goes to S tier. It is fantastic. I really love the promo material for this film. I love the trailers for this film. I did not realize how much I would love the film as a whole. It is fantastic. It's the first time we see Miles Morales on screen in a movie, and it's great. It really is great. It stands up there with being one of the best Spider-Man films of all time. It is so good. Obviously the animation style and all of that is fantastic, but at the end of the day, like the story as well is just it's so good. Miles Morales in this film was amazing, and obviously we get to see other renditions of the Spider-Man character from the Spider-Verse, which is really exciting. I really liked Jake Johnson's portrayal as Peter B. Parker as well, like a sort of washed up Peter Parker. I thought that was interesting. And yeah, overall it's an amazing movie. It really is strong. I watch this every once in a while and it never gets old. It's always exciting, it's always riveting. It also has some nice callbacks to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films and the Mark Webb Spider-Man films, which I really enjoyed as well. And it's a really fantastic film. Like, if you guys haven't seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, seriously watch it. Highly recommend it. Go check it out, watch it, it's great. Okay, next up we have Venom. It's going low D for decent. This film was a bit all over the place for me. I mean, I just felt like it was drawn out. It was a bit boring. It was, I don't know. Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock was great. I loved Venom as well, but at the end of the day, it just was a decent film. was a decent film. I mean, the second one looks great from the trailers. I'm flipping excited for that. But unfortunately, this film, it just felt almost like unnecessary, if that makes sense. And it just felt like it didn't really have much of a purpose or direction. I don't know if that was just me, but that's how I felt. But as I said, Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock was great. And Venom was obviously quite cool to see again on screen. It is also R-rated, which was cool. So like we got to see a bit more of like a hardcore version of Venom, which I appreciated, which we obviously didn't get to see in Spider-Man 3. So yeah, it was good. It was decent. But unfortunately, it was just decent for me. Nothing more than that. And then we have Spider-Man Far From Home, and it's gonna go strong D as well. Actually, no, I'll push it to C. Load C tier. I said this in the MCU tier list video. I don't like it when they take Spider-Man out of New York City. I just don't think it works as well. I like Spider-Man in New York City. I think that's dope. I think it's cool. But when you take him away from that, like it's still cool and exciting. But I feel like a lot of the character's identity is in New York City, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Maybe it's a very narrow-minded viewpoint, but that's just how I think. But that being said, even outside of that, like I just didn't feel like this film was as engaging and as entertaining as the first Spider-Man film in the MCU, Spider-Man Homecoming. That being said, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio was great. I liked Tom Holland again in this film as well, and how he sort of had to deal again with like the conflict of choosing his life as Peter Parker and choosing his life as Spider-Man. I like that conflict in this film. I thought that was good, but it unfortunately isn't as great as the first one. And also, like, again, I just don't like the whole thing with like the Stark stuff. Like, I feel like that idea was executed well in the first one, Spider-Man Homecoming, but like, let's just move on from there. We don't have to stay on that the whole time, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I'm feeling about that one at the moment. Low C tier, that's how I'm feeling. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this tier list video. Obviously, I'll make more of these in the future when more Spider-Man films come out. But that's kind of where it is at the moment. These being the absolute best. We can take that out of there for now, I guess. But yeah, I'm putting it there because I love that series so much. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what your guys' favorite Spider-Man films are in the comments down below. And let me know what you thought of the trailer, Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. Thought it looked fantastic, and I'm so excited for that film. But yeah, thank you once again for watching a tier list video on my channel. Really appreciate it. So I hope you guys are enjoying these. Let me know what else you'd like to see in the future tier list as well in the comments. That'd be great. But yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic day going forward, and I'll see you guys next week for another tier list video. And until then, bye bye.